world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslak.
And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen.
Hi, welcome to the Soulful Leader Podcast. This is Stephanie and Maren is here with me. We're just talking about beginnings and endings. Like, why are they so hard? Like, for so many people, it's so hard to start something. And other people love starting things, but they hate finishing them. Like, there's this beginnings and the endings. And I'm one of those people that I just like the middle. I like the jelly-filled center. So when you think of like the Oreo, I like the middle. But we're also different and we're also unique. So what is it about beginnings, Maren, that you like? What is, do you find them challenging? What is it about beginnings for you?
I personally find beginnings very exciting. Like, I love the new and the beginning and and I get very excited about that. And we have done a podcast about different types of energies that are kind of our natural energies, what we come in with. My energy is dynamo energy, which is a beginning energy. And I think that's part of it. I also think that new can be scary, the new beginnings, because it requires of us or I think a lot of times our society believes that we need to have a plan in order to do a new beginning. And if you don't, you're just one of those free spirits that just goes and does things, and it's kind of frowned upon. Mm-hmm. And so there's this judgment around just going and doing things.
I know my husband he's a steel energy, which they like certainty. They want the container, they want the plan, they want certainty. I know your husband is also steel. And I'm a blaze person. So I'm kind of like the middle of the summer. I like the party. I like the fun times. And I don't necessarily want to start the party, but man, I want to be there. I want to be in the middle of it. When I look at beginnings, there definitely has to come from a place of trust of the unknown. It's like, where are you connected to? If you're connected to your plan, which is great to have, plans are essential to have until they're not, until sometimes something just happens. And you have to literally rely on the unknown, that you're going to be safe, that everything's going to be okay. And if you haven't practiced letting go and trusting the unknown, it can be a very, very scary place, absolutely, and cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, but it doesn't have to be that way.
So is there a practice that you have to actually do that, to let go and trust the unknown? Is there something that you do personally?
Personally, well, there's many things I do personally. I would say the biggest thing is that when something happens, is what I tell myself about it. That's probably the number one thing, is like, when I'm anxious or scared or upset, I'm like, okay, what am I telling myself about this? Am I being shaming, or am I being fear or disempowering? Am I saying, oh my gosh, it's going to be the worst thing that ever happened, and blah, 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 blah. That's where the complaining and gossiping and can kind of go on. And you don't have to complain and gossip to someone else. You can complain and gossip to yourself, by the way.
Oh,
that
we
is
do it all the time.
All the time, right?
Yeah.
So I have to catch my inner mind talk about, what am I believing about what just happened, or what is going to happen, or what I don't know is going to happen? What am I telling myself? And then I say to myself, is this empowering me, or is this creating more anxiety and stress? Mm-hmm. Because it gives me, when I say that, it gives me that space to then choose, that I can say, you know what, I can choose. And you may have heard this, and I know it's kind of a new age thing, but it's also a scientific thing. It's like where you put your attention is where you go. So what we say, we create our own reality. If you're someone that's ever horseback, did horseback riding or drives a car or a truck for a living, you know that where your eyes go, the body naturally follows. I surf and I snowboard, and the same is true too, as well as dancing or
Yeah.
leading, right? It's like where your intention, where your eyes go, is where the flow of energy is going to go. This is also
Dancers know
science.
that where you spot, so when you're doing a turn and you spot something, it brings your body around. Yeah.
That's right. So it's like what you're focusing on is it's like in yoga, we call it our drishti. It's our center point, our focal point. It's like, what's your focal point? Where are you heading? So are you doom and glooming it? Or are you, this is a new possibility and only good things will happen? Even if 99% of you believes that it's going to be the doom and gloom, if you have just the tiniest little bit that says, okay, but what if? What if this is the best thing that ever could happen to me? I just need to put my energy there, because I know that when I put my focus and my energy there, that's what I'm going to start to see. So that's one practice for sure that I do.
I love that. And it reminds me of the Einstein quote of, is this a friendly, like the most important decision that you can make is do you live in a friendly universe or not? And I'm paraphrasing, it's something along those lines. And I think that is the most, I mean, if because we're talking about beginnings and endings, and if we're looking at a new beginning and we don't believe we live in a friendly universe, we are going to manifest all kinds of crap between us and our new beginning. And it's going to be hard and it's going to feel anxious. And you'll find, that we have in our brain something called the reticular activating system. And it's science. And the reticular activating system, the whole job of it is there's billions and billions of bytes of information that assault our senses, or that are out there that we take in every day, every moment of every day. And the reticular activating system, its job is to sort through that and decide what's important for us, because it's just way too much information. Just imagine like when you're surfing the internet and you get that overwhelming feeling and you're like, oh, I just need to go something that's familiar. So there's a part of our brain that does that for us. And its assignment is to go and look for what resonates, what is in alignment with our beliefs. So if I believe that beginnings are easy, then I go to start something new, and the reticular activating system part of my brain will go and look for, how is this going to be easy? And it'll find it. So it will find whatever proof you need. If you believe that beginnings are hard and that they're stressful, and it will go and find proof that beginnings are hard and they're stressful, and you'll be right. So essentially the reticular activation system, its job is to make you right.
And you're in control of it.
You are. You get to decide.
You get to decide.
And what's cool is, and I've done this for myself, is I give it a new assignment. I was like, okay, I get that I've asked you in the past to go look for how things are hard and, like who's being grumpy or whatever. And now what I'd like for you to go and look for, I reassign it and I say, I want you to go look and show me all the ways that this is going to be an easy thing for me to do.
You give it a promotion, you give it a new job role. I love that.
Totally. And it's more joyful. And that's that you give it that as like, how could a new beginning be joyful? How could it, or whatever it is that you're working on, you can reassign that so that, you give it we did a podcast on the stories we tell ourselves. And this is essentially kind of the same thing of like, what stories are we telling ourselves about new beginnings?
And endings are just that. Our endings are also new beginnings. They're one and the same. It's a circle. So we can look at the ending and going, and we do need to look at that. Look at the ending, and maybe it came sooner than you were wanting or ready for. And so there is a processing time of emoting. And I say that emotion is energy in motion. And all of us want more energy. We all want more fluidity, more flow, more currency. And that is what energy in motion is. So when we hold back our emotions, we're actually holding on to toxic energy. Like it becomes toxic, like anything. Water that does not move, you could have beautiful, pure water, but if you don't move that water, if it doesn't circulate, it becomes toxic. And that is true of our energy as well. So endings, allow yourself to feel it. I have a rhyme I say, I call it, in order, in order to heal it, you need to feel it. So feeling is actually really good. Feeling what you're feeling, feel it fully, and it will move you and it'll help you move. That's another practice of just being present to and asking yourself, what am I feeling right now about this? Can I give it space and can I feel it?
So the other day, I love that. Thank you. And the other day, I heard something that shifted endings for me. And we all can re- um, resonate. We can all relate to school and a graduation. I think at some point, everybody has gone through some schooling of some sort. And when we graduate, there is an ending of what we were doing and a new beginning, and we're excited about it. And there's a sadness of we're going to miss our friends and what happened. And I realized what shifted in me was the reason that a graduation is called a commencement is because it commences the next piece of your life.
So it's really what you're focusing on, isn't it?
It's what you're focusing on. And I realized that I can choose that in every aspect of any time that something ends, then something new begins. And if I can acknowledge that and say, in whatever ending that it is, that this is a graduation, that this is my commencement, now I've shifted my focus. And that's the easiest way for me to shift my focus because I can already relate to that. I can say, okay, what if I pretend like this is just another school that I went through? I went through the school of life, and this commencement is the next piece of my school of life.
That is such good information. I remember someone shared with me one time about fear. And they said, fear is not a bad thing. Fear just means you're in a place that you haven't been before, which means you stepped out of your comfort zone and you're in a new commencement. You're in a new beginning. So there's a real natural tendency to want to go back to what's familiar, but what's familiar isn't always good or healthy for you anymore. And especially if you're wanting to grow and evolve, fear is going to be a very healthy emotion to step into. And I have an acronym for fear, which is false evidence appearing real. One of our teachers says to us a lot, he said, fear and danger are not the same thing. Danger is real. You don't run across the street without looking both ways in the middle of, time, in the middle of New York in a busy afternoon. Like, you just don't do that. That's stupid. You're going to get killed. But there is a way that you can step outside of your comfort zone and get across the street without being afraid. Afraid is a choice. Being in fear is a choice. And false evidence appearing real, this is kind of what we're talking about. Like, what are you believing? What are you thinking about? Where are you focusing? And is that really helping you or hindering you?
And I like the idea of it being a message too. So it's not, I don't put myself in shame if I find myself in fear. I look at it of, is it a message? So if I am always afraid going to cross the street or starting a new venture or whatever, that can be healthy. Like you said, that's the first thing you said was, it's actually a healthy thing for me to stop and go, okay, what are the things I need to be aware of here?
It's a learning opportunity, and to be able to pick up the gifts, and perhaps that little fear is tugging at you saying, hey, I really want you to get some consciousness about this before you take the next step, because you're going to need it. And it's not about holding you back. It's just about slowing you down enough to connect and to remember, what it is that you want and why you want it.
The other thing it makes me think about is that there may be a smaller more bite-sized, easier chunk to start with. One of our teachers is a big proponent of like take the next easiest, simplest, smallest step. And we talked about prototypes before, but that's what a prototype is. Like, what's the next thing to do? Instead of, oftentimes when we think of beginnings and maybe even endings, but definitely when we think of beginnings, it's this big, overwhelming chunk. And so take it and be like, what would be the first step? And I know that's a part of a lot of goal setting is like, okay, set the goal. It's a big goal, and then chunk it down into bite-sized pieces. And I think that's a great way to think about it. And oftentimes those bite-sized pieces will take you in a different direction, and that's okay too. It's like follow that flow, follow the trail of what you were inspired to do. And that can oftentimes diminish that fear.
Use the least amount of energy, whether that's physical energy, the least amount of effort, least amount of financial energy, like the least amount of thinking energy, all of those parts in order to help you get to where you want. What would that be? And just, to allow yourself to be stretched gently, like through inspiration, not stretched to break yourself.
Yeah. And so as we were talking, talking about beginnings and endings, I know for myself that oftentimes I will put off an ending because of that anxiousness. And we talked earlier about, like I'm more comfortable with beginnings. And at the same time, in order to begin something new, you have to also honor the ending of something else. And so right now it's interesting because at my studio, I have chosen to, I just came to the realization last week that that's not what, I don't want to be running a studio anymore, that it's time for me to let go of that. And when I told my team, one of my team members looked at me incredulously, and I was like, well, and I started to defend myself and explain myself. And she's like, no, I'm not looking at you like that. She's like, are you kidding me? You didn't know that you didn't want to do this anymore? I've known for 6 months. And I was like, yeah, sometimes I can be slow, right? There was a process that I needed to go through. And obviously I was sending the signals out of like, I'm done. I had already started something new. I'm in my new energy. I'm all excited. And I wasn't honoring that ending and literally giving myself the graduation, the commencement, and saying, okay, it's time. And when I did that, it's amazing. Everything shifted. And it wasn't, I was doing all the stuff. I just hadn't admitted it to myself. And so I think a lot of times we do that to ourselves, and then we find ourselves in sticky situations, So having that integrity and honesty.
Such a great example, Maren, of like just taking that time to acknowledge it. That is definitely one way. And I also can see another way of like people will hold on to the old ways because they also haven't created a new way yet too.
And it's scary.
And it's scary. So it's like, if you can allow yourself to be open to the possibility of creating a new way of being in this world, it can help you let go of the old. That can be another way too.
And I know for myself, even with a new way of, like we're doing this and there's a lot of new things that I have going on, there was a part of me that wanted to hold on to what was familiar, to what I know. And there was a part of me that's like, well, what will I do? How will I define, who will I be? How will I define myself? And what's interesting is earlier, before we actually started this podcast, that was one of the things I said to Stephanie is like, I always introduce myself as I'm Maren, I own Heart and Soul Dance, and I do these other things. And now I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to actually introduce myself as I'm Maren and I do these other things. I used to own Heart and Soul Dance or run it or whatever, right? So as I transition, defining who that new being is. And you've said it before, we're human beings. We're not human doings. I'm not defined by what I do.
And we have the power to create who we want to be.
Yeah. And taking the time to actually, we've talked about that, of like having the space and the time, making the space and the time to actually think about who you want to be. And then what will you do, because that's where the doing comes in, to become that person.
So this is a great place for us to embrace the ending of today's podcast so that we can embrace the becoming of who we want to be.
I will say, Stephanie, though, I don't want to let go. I want to keep you all. I want to keep you all enthralled. So please come back and join us next week. We'll be here.
Until next time.
Thanks everyone.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.